So I think it'll be fine. And speaking of, so this is a perfect lead in. So speaking of the um, next story, okay. So the next story has to deal with July. So as I made mention, we have Indiana Jones coming out this week. Okay. Um, this is all based on nothing else but nostalgia. That's it. Okay. And there's a whole other thing to it, but for what it's worth, nostalgia right now is the end thing. It is. I mean, you've got Top Gun Maverick, you've got Indiana Jones, you brought back Han Solo in The Force Awakens a few years ago. Nostalgia is the big thing. And with the technology that we have now, okay, you're able to do what is done here. Okay. So on the right, you have the current Harrison Ford, and on the left, you have a de-aged Harrison Ford. Now, they've done this in other films, like most readably, most recently, the 2019 The Irishman. So, I mean, this is not brand new technology, and it's been around a couple of years. But this is, at the end of the day, this is a time travel movie, and you're going back in time and everything else. I think this is going to be fun. I do. Like I said, is it going to turn a profit? I don't know, but I think it's going to be a fun movie. But that leads into another thing, okay? And the question is this going to how is um how is July going to do? I mean that's a serious question, right? How is July going to do? Because we have all these movies. So this article here comes from Variety, and it talks about another pileup of films. Okay, at the end of last year, um, Flick's Brewhouse faced a dire situation, albeit one that was unique to Texas-based movie chain. There weren't enough movies to show in August. We were going to A24 or anywhere else. Does anything have anybody put it on screens? Recalls the chief revenue officer. That's not the case this summer, as exhibitors grapple with different reality. Can back to back blockbusters succeed at once? Or can big movies cannibalize each other? And that's what we're starting to see with all these. Those are the questions as popcorn season kicks into high gear with the arrival of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which is coming out this weekend. Mission Impossible, okay, the 12th. Barbie, the 21st. And Christopher Nolan. All these films carry big budgets and require outsized ticket sales to turn a profit. It's complete night and day, Randleman said. In the last 2 years, if something failed, we didn't have anything for 6 weeks. Now, if something tanks, you move on to the next one. That's the way Hollywood always works. The hope is that all these films will find audiences. However, a senior analyst at ComScore calls the month-long stretch between Indiana Jones 5 through Barbie and Oppenheimer one of the most competitive periods in most recent history. This will be a stress test for the theatrical market and the more important movie-going season of the year, he said. The stakes are incredibly high. So, as far as Hollywood's attempt this year for counter programming, which has been disastrous, audiences don't have an overwhelming desire to watch The Flash or Pixar's Elemental, but because those movies were scheduled too close to each other. Even as the box office recovers and finds and fits and starts, there are signs that in the even in the pandemic era, several films can work at the same time. A prime example can be last summer's Jurassic World Dominion, which scored a mighty $145 million opening, even as Cruise's enduring hit Top Gun Maverick pulled in 51.8 million in its third weekend. Another weekend in the middle of 2022 with four movies. You had Elvis, Blumhouse Thriller The Black Phone, which is amazing. I love The Black Phone. In addition to Maverick and Jurassic World Dominion, each grossing $20 million in the same Friday to Sunday frame. It's a sign that the summer's newcomers can coexist beyond their opening weekends so long as ticket buyers can see them. About quality, says one owner. Everything looks good on the horizon, but if the movies aren't great, people wait a month until they're on streaming. Movie theater owners believe that the range of offerings will appeal to moviegoers of all demographics, and he's right about this. It's the right mix of movies to not only survive but thrive off one another. He's particularly high on Barbie because pre-sales at his theater have already been surging. I think it'll be one of the true breakouts of the summer. Everyone can survive. We have enough screens. So one of the theater owners says, however, they're cautiously optimistic about a potential pileup. It would have been better if they spread things out a little bit more. We have a whole summer. These movies are back to back to back in the same month. He was particularly concerned about the space between the family offerings like uh, Ruby Gilliman, the Teenage Kraken, which opened shortly after Elemental, and Disney's Haunted Mansion, which arrives a couple weeks later. I wish it was at least another week between the kid stuff, he said. Theaters do a lot of business with summer camps. If all of the movies come out at once, there'll be nothing for left to see later on. At least Hollywood didn't forget about August, which is ripe for a sleeper hit. On the calendar is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, Rated R Strays, Meg 2, The Trench. And these movies are part of franchises as big as Mission Impossible for filmmakers as beloved as Gerwin or Nolan. But The Trench, for one, is the sequel to the 2018 disaster movie, The Meg, which grossed $530 million worldwide. Never bet against a shark movie. He's right about that. But nonetheless, I think that here's the thing. At the end of the day, okay, I think that it's going to be fascinating. And as the guy said, it's quality over quantity. And I think the fact that you have these two films coming out, okay, you have Mission Impossible, which is making its debut on the 12th, and they move that up 2 days. It's going to make a lot of money coming in. It's going to have a whole weekend to itself. And I do believe, okay, and I've said this before, I do believe that the fact is that Mission Impossible, because of how big and grandiose it is going to win that second weekend. And that's going to be the weekend of Barbie and Oppenheimer. I'm not saying they're both going to crash, but what I am saying is that it's going to eat into it. It's cannibalize it a little bit. And as the piece also made reference to, there are there's something there for everybody, right? I mean, you've got Mission Impossible, okay? You've got Barbie, you've got, for that crowd. You have Oppenheimer for that crowd. So I think there's something to be said there, okay? And so, I mean, you'll have another animated movie in there. So there's something for everybody. Um, I think it'll be interesting. And here's the other thing, too. This is why Tom Cruise was so upset. I know I keep going back to Cruise, but Oppenheimer is getting the PLFs. So anybody who's not familiar with what a PLF is, it's called a premium large format. It's Dolby, it's ScreenX, it's IMAX. Oppenheimer's going to be getting it for 3 weeks. That's huge. 3 weeks. So he's definitely going to eat away some of the other monies from Mission Impossible. Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny does debut prediction. So worldwide, I think it's a little high worldwide. I would probably say around 250 or 3, but I definitely think it's going to be there. I think it's going to definitely make money. Is Kathleen Kennedy's future on the line with Indy 5? I think yes. I do. I think that if she leaves, I mean, I think if this does not go well, okay, which there's a possibility it might not, okay, I think she's done. I think she's done. Now, obviously, she would not she'd get everything in line with all the other films, but I do think that because if you look at the one thing about Kathleen Kennedy is this, and listen, she's a hell of a producer. She's a hell of a producer. I'm not going to dispute that. Okay. She has 3 or 4 billion-dollar movies under her belt. Okay. Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, even if you didn't care for it, and Last Jedi. But there was no planning there. The number of writers and directors and people that came through there, it was like a revolving door. They only, and they're trying to, capture the same magic that they had, and they're not going to be able to do that. Now that they've announced all these other movies, and I don't know. I just can't see. I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong. But because if I'll tell you right now, if this doesn't go well for her or Lucasfilms, she's going to take some heat. and I can't see her sticking around. You know, but 3 to 400. So 350 to 400 worldwide. I think it could make 70, 80 right now. Domestic opening weekend. That's just me. Mind you, I have nothing to back that up. There's just complete spitballing there. I rewatched all four films yesterday, and it's amazing how incredible all of them are. From the adventure aspect to the direction and their performances. So excited for Dial of Destiny, hoping for a win. Yeah, if you take a look at where this was, so the story goes, okay, that when they were doing, and I say they, it was George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. And basically, Lucas had a plan. I mean, he was doing Star Wars at the time. I think he was doing Empire Strikes Back. And he was imposed to that. And he said, "Look, Steven, I've got this great idea for this archaeologist, this adventure story, and whatever else. I can't do it. I want you to direct. But it's got to be a trilogy." And he's like, "Okay, no problem." So what ended up happening was he ended up doing Raiders, which was completely original, and it was incredibly good. And then at that point, what ended up happening was because Raiders was such a success, they went and said, "Okay, well, let's do a sequel." And he was going to do the sequel, and of course, in 1984's um, Temple of Doom. And anybody who's watched, Spielberg and a couple of featurettes, was a complete disaster. Everybody was getting malaria. The actors were getting sick. Okay, I mean, the story, they had to rewrite the story, and it was really, really dark. I mean, it was about this cult, right? And, I mean, obviously, anybody who's seen Temple of Doom, but it's about this cult. And Indiana Jones has to basically go get this rock from this cult. I mean, they were pulling, hearts out of people's chests. It was dark. The only good thing that came out of that is Stephen met Kate Capshaw and married her. That's it. And then, that's why Last Crusade was so lighthearted. You had Sean Connery in there and it was fantastic. And then, as the film went along, he got, it got more lighthearted and funny and everything else. And even Connery had his moments and it just worked. And that's, how that ended. That's where I think everybody wanted it to end. So when he came back for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's like, and then it didn't perform well. And then, of course, because it didn't perform well, when they say, "Oh yeah, guess who's coming back?" and you get here, and like, "Oh God, here we go again." So I mean, yeah, and people don't really realize this, but like Temple of Doom, so the theatrical release order, you have Raiders and Temple. Temple of Doom actually has chronologically first, so it's like Star Wars. The first, we got 4, 5, and 6, okay, but that wasn't the story. You had 1, 2, and 3 first, but he had to introduce 4, 5, and 6 first. Otherwise, people would never like, what the hell is this? And of course, the technology was better and everything else. So yeah, the Meg 2 will be interesting to see how it performs, especially since on September there's another Jason Statham movie led sequel, Expendable 4. I'm curious to see how it'll do 9 years after 3. I don't know. So don't forget too, there's another little sequel coming out September 1st. One of my top 5 most anticipated movies of the year, and that's Equalizer 3. I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. I'm delighted. I'm all in on that. I think the Equalizer or the Expendables thing, yes, they're trying to rotate new people in, right? Like Megan Fox and everybody else. I just don't see I just don't see it. I mean, it's going to do a lot. It's going to do money, but I think you had the window is closed. So I mean, it's going to do better. Oh, I'll say this much: it'll do better overseas than it does here domestic. Kathleen Kennedy's not going anywhere. Yeah, I mean that's remains to be seen. I think that you know but I guarantee you she'll definitely take credit for this if it blows up and everything else. Does Rogue One also count in the leadership of her too as a billion-dollar film? Personally, I love the sequel, so it was a great experience seeing all three films on the big screen along Solo and Rogue One. Yes, yeah, that was when I said three or four. That was the other one. Rogue One was like I call it Star Wars 3.5, right? So I mean, it's that story that they're going to get the plans. Absolutely, that definitely does count. Solo was Solo was a bomb because I think that um, not only did you have Rogue One come out really recently after that, but I think it's because too there are certain characters out there that you you don't need to know the backstory of. They're just like I don't need to know the backstory of Han Solo. I don't need to see him as a younger guy. When I meet him in 1977 Star Wars, I need to know. I don't need to know his backstory. Okay, it's like the Joker. Okay, the Joker is another one of those, and there have been so many iterations of the Joker. I know, but at the same, I don't need to know where he came from. I don't know. In '89, I understand that was a different time, but I don't need to see how he became the Joker, right? But Joker, here's the thing: Joker worked because it was films that don't show origin stories. Batman getting his parents shot, Superman being on Krypton, you know, everything else like that. They work because they don't show it. That's why the Batman, for what it's worth, that's why the Batman was so successful. Because, we just had Dark Knight Rises a couple years earlier, like 5 or 6 years earlier, but I don't need to see his parents be shot. And he used references from all the other films. That's like Man of Steel. Man of Steel was a very good movie, but they didn't stay on Krypton too long. It was about 15, 20 minutes, and then the rest of it was on Earth. So, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. But yes, it does count to answer your question. Yes, Temple of Doom is 1935, Raiders is in 36, Last Crusade 38, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls in 57, Dial of Destiny. So, yeah. So it's strange how they do all that stuff. September will be a good month for franchises. Equalizer and the Spenders, they need to take a breath for as well as, yeah. So really, and I've said this before, it used to be back 20 years ago, okay? It used to be June, July, and August. That used to be blockbuster season. Then there was a little movie called Spider-Man. And Spider-Man, yes, I'm talking about that Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's, that was going to come out in 2001. And then, of course, we had the tragedy happen. Okay. September 11th happened. And what ended up happening was Sony said, oh, no, we can't do that. So they waited a whole year. And then they put it out in May of 2002, and it exploded. And that was when it became May. That's when the blockbuster season started. And it went May, June, July. And August is like that if you really wanted to, that's like that month that you want to put a movie out. It's the end of the summer and see how it does. So yeah, it's one of those things where, look, this is still my favorite movie this summer. Okay, and I know I keep talking about it and talking about it, but I said it was on a space the other night. And I was having a conversation with somebody, and look, it's subjective, and I get that and everything else. But for what it's worth, I think personally speaking, Tom Cruise is the last movie star we have. Okay, because of what he does and how he does it. And no, I mean, DiCaprio is a star, no doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. Okay. But there are no more stars in Hollywood. Okay. Are there big names? Absolutely. Okay. Take a look at somebody like a Bradley Cooper or a Leonardo. Leonardo DiCaprio is a star. Truth be told, he's a star, but he's a different star. Okay. I mean, he's done, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and, all these, I mean, The Reverend, The Aviator, it runs the gamut. Tom Cruise, For the first half of his career, okay, he basically was learning. Okay, he was learning all the way from Taps to Mission Impossible. He was learning. He learned his craft. For the second half of his career, for the last 25 years, he's been doing everything. He's been producing. He's been acting. He's been, getting. It's just mind blowing. That's why I love the behind the scenes stuff for everything. So, um, yeah. So that's why I do that. Anyways, guys, what do you think about July's upcoming movies? Do you think that they're going to be cannibalized? Do you think that they're going to eat into each other? Or do you think there's going to be one or two definitive winners and the rest is going to be left in the dust? Leave me your thoughts down in the comments, and I'm going to get back to everybody.